In this video, we're going to cover everything that you need to know, including hacks and tricks for the upcoming Tokyo Marathon. Konnichiwa and welcome. My name is Letty. I am the host of the Marathon Running Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. And today we're going to talk about all things that have to do with going to the Tokyo Marathon, including your travel, accommodations, where to stay, Expo, race day logistics, cultural stuff, hacks and tricks, and things that I learned when I went to Tokyo last year, because there were some things that I wish I would have known that would have just made everything a lot easier. So we're going to hop into all of that. For my listeners, this is also available as a video on YouTube. So all you have to do is go to YouTube and type in @runningpodcast. Normally, we don't do the hybrid of having a audio podcast also available as a visual. But since I have gone to Tokyo last year and completed the race, I figured it would be nice to kind of have some visuals for this. So that's going to be there for you in case you want that. So with that, let's hop into our first thing. My number one regret, which also now is the number one tip, is to get yourself a SUICA card. What is a SUICA card? A SUICA card is an IC card that you can put money on, that you can then use for all the transportation, and you can also use it for some restaurants and other things in Japan that don't allow you to pay with credit cards. The way you get yourself a SUICA card is do not buy it in a store and do not download the app. What you want to do is to open your Apple Wallet and add it there. It's much easier to use and much easier to navigate. So basically, you just put it in your Apple Wallet and you put some money on it, and then that way you can just run it as if it's a debit card, and it makes life super easy. I made the mistake of not even looking into this type of card because I just assumed, okay, Japan always sees how modern it is. So all I'm going to do is bring my credit card and bring an ATM card like I usually do wherever I go, and then deduct money from my ATM machine and just have that available. But newsflash, I went to the most modern ramen place and I ordered everything of a computer and it was brought out to me, and then I was trying to pay, and it said that it was cash only or a SUICA card. So then I went to an ATM, and even though I had selected English, I couldn't read what was going on, and the numbers were confusing me because it was late. It was literally the first day I'd gotten there. And then I deducted, 30,000 yen or however much money I deducted. In my head, it wasn't more than $100. And it said approved, and then nothing came out except for a receipt in Japanese. And I couldn't read it. So then I was freaking out and I couldn't use it, and I didn't want to use it again. Instead, I borrowed money, cash from a friend, and lived that way. And you don't want to do that. It just adds a lot of pressure to yourself, because then for future restaurant visits, now you always have to ask if they take credit cards. And a lot of them really don't, especially if you're into the good dining where you want to try authentic foods and not just go to the chain restaurants. And a lot of those do take that SUICA card. So that is really, really my biggest tip to you. And it kind of goes along with my tip number two. My tip number two is get yourself the Google app, because if you have the Google app on your phone, even if you have an iPhone, you can hold the camera onto something and it'll translate what it says into English. I don't know if most of you guys already do that. I normally, when I travel, I don't have that problem. I am half German, half Ecuadorian, so I speak Spanish and German, and which, if you read Spanish, you can also read a little bit of Italian and a little bit of French, and I usually make my way around really well. And when I was there, it was one of those, okay, I can't even guess what it means because I can't read the symbols. Obviously, it's on me, but just to make your own life easier, do yourself a favor, get that Google app and then hold the camera onto something and it'll translate it. And that's just absolutely beautiful. I downloaded it when I was there, and it was smooth sailing after that. And with that, I want to go kind of straight to my third tip, which is do not be intimidated by the public transportation. The public transportation might seem overwhelming because everything is in Japanese and you can't read it, and you're going to think, oh, how am I going to ever find the path from here to there? Everything is organized so well. If you take 1 minute and look at the map of the metro and see how usually the lines are organized by numbers going up and going down in numbers. It's not random stops. They're all labeled with numbers. So it's super easy to navigate. Take 2 seconds. You'll figure it out. Everything's on time. Everything's clean, and everything's going to be okay. I wish you good luck with that and enjoy it too, because it's a whole experience in itself. So moving on to more marathon style content, we're going to talk about the Expo. The Expo is going to be at the Big Sight Center, which is south of everything, kind of close to the water. And that's going to be open on Thursday and Friday from 10 to 9 and Saturday from 10 to 6. And brace yourself because the Expo gets really, really busy and there will be lines. So if you want to get in line and wait early, kind of look at it as a Black Friday event, and then you gotta run. When I went last year, everything was pretty crazy at the Expo because when you're in those stores, it literally was people running around, holding stuff up, yelling sizes, and almost like it's free stuff and they're trying to hand it out. There was stuff on the floor that was discarded that people tried on and didn't fit them. It got really, really messy. So I know that Japan is usually organized, but when it comes to that Expo, I think it's just a matter of demand. And also, it's not Japanese people trampling the stuff. It's all of us. So there goes that. They probably think the Expo is crazy too. When it comes to finisher t-shirts, you have to also pre-order, and you do that when you register, and otherwise you really can't get a t-shirt, and that's unfortunate. However, there is a consolation prize. If you do not get a t-shirt, all of you will get this beautiful poncho at the end of the race. And this poncho is something else. It's basically almost like a hooded towel type of rope. It's very thin, but it's absolutely beautiful. Now moving on to race day logistics, your best friend is the participant's guide that the Tokyo Marathon will email you, or maybe already has emailed you. It's a PDF booklet, and I highly, highly, highly recommend downloading it, especially if you're a person that is anxious, so that way you can read it from the front to the back twice while you're traveling there, and then you're really familiar with everything that is happening when you get there. In there, you will find things such as what is your starting gate, where is your starting corral. You will find subway exits to take if you're coming from north, south, east, or west. It has so much information in there that people that I know even took dry runs, meaning that they did the way from their hotel to the starting line the day before, just so they could know and be familiar with where to exit. However, this is a big marathon, so highly likely if you're traveling to Shinjuku using any kind of subway on the morning of, you will not be the only marathoner on the train. People like me who are not anxious and probably should be more anxious, what we do is we just get into the train and follow everyone else that looks like a marathoner, because usually there really is a crowd. So there is no reason to freak out about it. But that's just a tip personally from me to you. But again, everything is going to be in that booklet that you really definitely want to read, including starting corrals and opening times of those corrals. The corrals will open at 7 o'clock. So even if you were to get there at 5 o'clock, you're just going to wait in front of them. That's the beauty about the Tokyo Marathon. It doesn't start super early. The race doesn't start until 9:10 a.m. and you're not going to be starting the race any earlier if you arrive at the place earlier. But at the same time, it's still important to give yourself ample of time, because you are going to have to go through the security check, and you also are going to have to find everything. So give yourself time for that. And then you also may want to use the restroom, because I know that's we as runners love doing before races, and you want to have time for that, because I remember standing in line for about 30 minutes just to use the restroom, which in the end was fine because I was just killing time anyway. The deadline to enter the starting area is 8:45 and the deadline to enter the corral assigned to you is 8:55. So keep that in mind. In that starting area, you're going to be able to find your bag check that you pre-purchased, and you will find the truck that has your number on it. It's super easy. Obviously, you're going to use the bag that was given to you at the Tokyo Expo, and that's a very, very smooth process. Now, one more thing about the starting area, you are not allowed to bring in liquids into that area because who knows what's in those liquids, and that's just a safety rule. So remember that you cannot bring big water bottles. What you can bring, however, is any liquids under 250 millimeters. So that's not a lot, but you can bring those in. In Japan, they sell a ton of these pouches and pouch drinks, and if you try them, you might like them. I ended up really liking them and purchasing a lot of them. They are under 250 milliliters, and also maybe tiny water bottles are under 250 millimeters. Keep in mind that in Japan, littering is strictly prohibited, so you're going to have to carry all your trash with you until you find a place that you can toss the trash. There are very few trash cans in the starting area, so keep that in mind. And obviously, if you have your gear check bag, you can always put your own trash in there and then dispose of it later. Now, speaking of gear check, you're going to use the gear check bag that was given to you at the expo along with the sticker that has your truck number on it. It's very, very smooth process, but of course you must have purchased the gear check prior to signing up for the marathon. So just make sure that that's you, so you can actually bring that with you. So let's talk about the course of the marathon. The course of the marathon is one that is very fast and very flat. Benson Caputo last year ran a 2:02 on that course, so that tells you right away that this is a fast course for the elites as well as for us, because we're running on the same course. The course is 4 miles of a very slight downhill, which I didn't feel. I felt like it was just the hype of running the Tokyo Marathon, but it is actually a tiny bit of downhill. It's probably 40 meters spread out over the first 5 miles or so-ish. And then the rest is very, very flat. So that makes it a fast course. Also, since the weather in March is usually a little bit cooler, this could set you up for a real good PR. And whether you are there to PR or finish, do yourself a favor and go back to that handbook where you can see where the aid stations and restrooms are. There are aid stations all over the course. I think it's about every 5 kilometers with sports drinks and all kinds of treats. The sports drinks that they use at the Tokyo Marathon, it's a drink called Pocari Sweat. I tried Pocari Sweat right when I flew into Tokyo at a grocery store. I just bought a big bottle because I wanted to familiarize myself with it because I will not carry water during my runs. And I was very pleasantly surprised once I got over the name sweat, because when you're drinking sweat, it just sounds like you're going to drink this nasty, salty substance off of someone's body. I didn't like the name that they call it sweat. But anyway, once I got over that, I actually tried the drink and I find it very, very delicious. I have no idea what the ingredients are because at the time when I purchased it, I didn't have the Google app that could tell me what it is. At the same time, I also didn't want to care. I just wanted to enjoy that drink because I wasn't going to change the marathon and have them offer me a different drink anyway. So I got familiarized with the drink and I luckily liked it. And there's also other things that they give you on the course, but I was carrying my own gel, so I wasn't gonna mess with that. But Pocari Sweat is a very delicious beverage. And along with that consumption, obviously you also want to familiarize yourself with where the restrooms are. And here's the thing about the restrooms. The restrooms are a little bit different. There's usually not a lot of porta potties on the course. The restrooms are sometimes off the course. And you will see volunteers holding up signs saying the restroom is 200 meters this way off the course. So that's really interesting because you are used to just doing your business on the course in the porta potty, and there you can't do it. So you might actually lose time. I had a friend that said he walked almost a half a kilometer to a restroom. So it's always important to familiarize yourself with those sorts of maps. Or if you don't want to do that, you can just run and then see what signage they are holding up, how far are the restrooms off the course. Hopefully, at the time that you have to go, you can just go to a restroom that is just right there. Last but definitely not least, let's talk about the strict time limit of the Tokyo Marathon. The Tokyo Marathon is a race that must be completed within 7 hours, and that's 7 hours gun time. What does gun time mean? Gun time means that the clock starts ticking as soon as the race starts, which means something different for everybody, right? If you are in a corral further up, then you start running your race sooner than somebody does that is in a later corral. I was very lucky that I was in a very early corral. I had a 3:09 marathon qualifying time that got me in one of the earliest corrals, and even I had to wait 20 minutes to start. So that means that by the time the race starts at 9:10, if I cross the starting line at 9:30, I already only have 6 hours and 40 minutes to finish this race. And so if you're in further corrals in the back, then you even have less time to finish this race, which makes this race so difficult for many people. So what does that mean for us runners? It means that we have to strategize and figure out how to best run this race, best pace this race in order to beat all the cutoff points. There are cutoff points that have been published that are as follows. You have to be past the 4.9 kilometer checkpoint by 10:25 a.m., the 11.1 kilometer checkpoint by 11:10 a.m., the 15.4 kilometer checkpoint by 11:55 a.m., the 20.9 kilometer checkpoint, which is halfway, by 12:25 p.m., the 24.7 kilometer checkpoint by 1:20 p.m. or 13:20, the 29.2 kilometer checkpoint by 2 p.m., the 33.5 kilometer checkpoint by 2:35 p.m., the 37.8 kilometer checkpoint by 3:15 p.m., and you have to have finished the race by 4:10 p.m. for it to count. If you want my personal opinion about this whole 7-hour race, I have no idea why they have to put such a strict gunpoint time limit for a race, especially given that so many people travel and spend a lot of money to be there. I wish that we could change that somehow. Just because you're already having the roads closed, what's another hour or two? That's my personal opinion on that. And I hope that many people voice their concerns to the Tokyo Marathon, that eventually they will change that. All right. Highly likely you've already booked your plane ride. I hope you have, as well as your accommodation. So this is for the future viewers/listeners. If you are going to Tokyo, you're going to face the dilemma what airport to fly in. There is Haneda and Narita, and you can pick. Haneda is more close to the center of Tokyo. It's southwest, whereas Narita is outside of Tokyo, and you're going to need a little bit of a longer travel into Tokyo. But here's the good news about Tokyo and Japan in general. The railway and public transportation is impeccable. So you should not have any hesitation picking whatever works best for you, your budget, or what you want to see, how much time you are giving yourself prior and after the race. So I wouldn't really hesitate. I personally flew into Haneda. I shop for my flights on Expedia because I try to get the best rates on there. I'm not really loyal to any airline. So Haneda was worked out for me, but I wouldn't have hesitated going to Narita because I know that the transportation in Tokyo is just really great. So that's that. As for accommodations, like with any marathons, I always dwell on where do I want to stay. I do a lot of marathon trips as a solo traveler. My husband stays home with the kids until they're bigger or until it's in a destination that he probably wants to go to, such as Hawaii or California. But anyway, so I do a lot of traveling solo. So I usually like to stay in the area where there's a lot of stuff going on. For example, if you go to Boston and you run the Boston Marathon, all of the Commons, which is the area where the race ends, turns into this village. So literally within a mile radius, everyone that you see is also a runner, which is very uplifting. And you know you're going to see all your friends from other places in the same areas. Usually in Boston, for example, they have Fan Fest and they have other events. They have pop-up stores and sales for certain brands that are hosting stuff, not just at the Expo, shakeout runs, all kinds of stuff. So normally for that type of travel, I always want to find that hub where I can see all the runners. With Tokyo, it's a little bit different. I was trying to figure out if there was such a hub, and there is not. The Tokyo Marathon starts at Shinjuku, which is northwest of Tokyo, and ends in Tokyo, kind of smack in the center by Imperial Palace, which is also by the Tokyo train station. So normally, also as a runner, you want to maybe stay closer to the starting line or finish line, depending on your preference. I'm usually a finish line type of person because I get frozen cold right after I'm done running. So my preference would have been to stay at the Tokyo train station, Imperial Palace area. But I was also very tempted to stay at Shinjuku solely because I knew I was going to be going to the press conference and other events. So because of that, I ended up picking a hotel in Shinjuku. Now, in retrospect, I kind of wish I would have just stayed at the train station because it was more central to sightseeing. And given that the Tokyo Marathon doesn't start until 9 o'clock, and coming from the US, you have that jet lag that you carry with you for a while. You're going to be up on race day morning early anyway. And with the amazing transportation that exists in Tokyo, you could have just taken a train to Shinjuku. So either way, though, Shinjuku was not a disappointment by any means. It was also very awesome. I also ran into a lot of runners there, so it was all good. I'm just saying from a sightseeing perspective or point of view, it would have been maybe better to stay closer to the central train station because I would have been going to a lot more different places. But that's that. Now let's talk about the type of accommodation. Obviously, if you're going through a tour group, which a lot of you guys are, you're going to be good. You're going to be in good hands and you know what to expect. If you are just booking a hotel room like I was and you're booking it through Expedia, you can see wherever you book your room, what the square footage or the square meters size of your room are going to be. I have a lot of American friends that prefer staying in American hotels, meaning they just want more space. So with that, you can just go with the bigger names that are usually available in bigger cities as well, including Tokyo. Or if you're like me and you kind of want a more local experience and live like the people live in the actual country, then you just book another hotel. I booked a Japanese hotel. My bed was tiny. The room was tiny. The food was definitely Japanese, but it was an all in all really wonderful experience. And that's just a preference thing, but it's all out there. Of course, there's also Airbnbs out there, but there's also different websites that you might not be aware of. So my advice would be just to go to a website like TripAdvisor and see what other travelers have to say, if they use Airbnb or if they have other things to say, if there's alternative websites. Also, please be cautious because we know in the US at least, if you are booking Airbnbs or VRBOs in a city of a marathon where there's an influx on a weekend on pricing, a lot of times hosts, unfortunately, cancel their accommodations because they know they can get paid more by other travelers closer to the date. And then you as a traveler are just kind of stuck without any type of accommodation. So just be aware of that. All right, so let's talk about the timing of your travel. Obviously, if this is going to be an A race for you and you're really trying to do well, and you're not just trying to get a marathon under your belt, then it's important that you get enough rest. And that rest can be difficult to get if you are flying to a different time zone where you're going to be potentially jet lagged. I've had such an experience myself when I went to Paris for the Paris Marathon, and I was just dead on race day because I'd only gotten there 2 or 3 days beforehand, and it was just literally killing me. But with that said, you book your accommodation list for as soon as your schedule allows, so that way you can kind of get used to the tune. A couple tips that I have for jet lag is to actually stay awake the first day and try to go to bed at the same time they do. That has worked wonders in recent trips, but sometimes it just doesn't work, and that's really just unfortunate. Another thing is that if you are already in Japan and you come from a far place such as the United States, then please make sure that you give yourself enough time to also travel and sightsee a little bit. I didn't do that and I almost regret it. I don't regret it because I wanted to see my family, but I do regret it because I know there's so many things that I could have seen and I didn't. So just take that as a piece of advice. Anyway, I think that concludes all my tips that I can think of right now. I invite you guys to put your own tips in the comments if I said something incorrectly. You're also very welcome to correct me in the comments. I am no guru and I'm also not a robot. So I don't know the answers to everything. I'm just trying to do my best and share my experience of this beautiful race that I was able to participate in last year and finish. And hopefully whatever I gave you guys from my own experience makes sense and it helps. If you do like this type of content, I invite you to check out some other of my videos. We do vlogs, we do shoe reviews, all sorts of stuff. So I invite you to subscribe. And with that, good luck in Tokyo. I wish you the very best. Let me know how it goes for you and have a great week of running.